Hello, hello, my beloved waking gods and goddesses. Maria West here, and welcome to Love, Truth, and Beauty. This is episode 373, and I have with me today my good friend Tarisha Tourok, who is here to share her magic. Welcome, Tarisha. How are you?
Thank you. I'm feeling really good. It's a nice summery day in New Zealand.
I love that. And I'm so fascinated by, we're just speaking a little while ago about the move from, because you're originally from Russia. And so how did that all come about? Let's hear about that.
Um, it's my dad. My dad had a dream of sailing around the world. And
Oh,
so we lived in Russia and Siberia and on the deepest lake in the world. And people think like there's nowhere to sail in Siberia, but actually we have this huge lake, which we call the sea. It's like
wow.
1.6 kilometers deep.
Holy moly.
Yeah, and so my dad and his friends, they built a boat in Siberia, and they took the boat to Vladivostok, to the east of Russia, and they sailed around the world. But they sailed to America, Alaska, San Francisco, and then they came down to New Zealand. And by the time they got down to New Zealand, it was 1993, and the Soviet Union collapsed. And
Whoa.
so things were a bit shaky in Russia at the time. And so my parents decided to come to New Zealand when I was 17.
Wow. Wow. And were you willing to go? Did you have any sort of misgivings?
No, I didn't want to go.
Yes.
No, because I love Russia and I still feel homesick. And now
Oh,
my life is here. My kids are here. My parents are here. But I'm quite homesick and I love Russia. It feels like I belong there.
yes.
And
I know that feeling actually.
uh,
Yeah. Oh, oh, but what
but
an
then,
amazing
at the same
story.
time, the work I do now, I don't think I would do it in Russia.
Okay. Okay.
So that feels really good that here it gave me opportunity to actually look at my life. What am I here for?
Yes.
And do
And
something quite different.
how did you come to that, because your background is diverse. I mean, you went from being an accountant to being a totally embodied, luscious woman. And so that contrast of accountant, very, very, very analytical numbers and all that kind of stuff. And then to this openness. I mean, I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, as I say, from an accountant to a sex therapist, which is a sex witch, which yeah, I just remember that's why I came into New Zealand and always wanted to go back to Russia
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to kind of earn money, right? That was like, okay, we're here. Then my dad encouraged me to become an accountant. And I had nothing better in my mind, so I just became an accountant. But I started to feel like I was in a straitjacket. I was like, my
Oh, I
body
can
was in so
imagine.
much pain,
Mm-hmm.
um, that I couldn't express myself.
Yes.
I was afraid of speaking. And I remember one moment where I had to leave a voice message on my phone as an accountant. I was so scared of my voice
Oh
that
man.
I had to wait for everyone to leave the office before I could leave the message there. And it took me like a
Wow.
month or two. And I just so remember how my voice was stuck and I felt so small, so constricted.
Mm-hmm.
It was just so horrible. So then I think at one point where it get to a point where it was so painful, I went like, stop it all.
Yeah.
And I was married at the time and I divorced, I resigned, and I just went to India.
Wow. What was India like for you? I mean, what was the reasoning behind that? Um,
I was reading lots of books and I knew that there will be a point where I'll need to go the spiritual way.
mhm. Okay.
And my friend gave me a book of Osho,
All
and
right.
I've been reading Osho and reading Osho. And then at one point I opened the last page and I was like, wow, they have a resort in India. And I was like, I'm going. And so then within 6 months, I went to India and I spent a couple of years in the resort in Pune.
Yeah. It's
And that was
so
the
beautiful
start
there.
of my
I've been there too.
spiritual.
And I just, magical, magical place, magical energy. And wow, how long were you there?
Well, I was there first 6 months, then I was there for a year, then another 6 months. So I kept on I just come to New Zealand, 3 months work and go back to India because it felt so. And I remember coming there first 2 weeks, I was just crying. I just realized how much was that pain of not expressing myself, of completely
Mm-hmm.
disconnecting from myself was so intense that there I was just crying and crying. And I was just relieving all that load that I had. And I remember
Oh,
2 weeks straight, and
yeah.
people were like, what's going on? But there it was such an accepting environment. You could just do
You could just
whatever
do
and
it.
still be
Yes.
with people.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so amazing. And what was your biggest like I know that place, and I know like I had a similar experience there where you just feel it. It's like the earth and the sky, the sort of holding that's happening when you're there just brought up so much. Like a lot of it I did not understand. I didn't know where the tears were coming from. um Other than it felt like it was me, but it also felt like the collective as well, of perhaps all of the collective suppression, repression, the sort of rules that we follow, and then you come to a place to just allow all that to perhaps dissolve. Um, so
I think, yeah, for me, it was that sense of melting, kind of melting those structures that were holding me so tight
mhm.
and just melting and melting. And then almost like losing any direction, like just it's that sense of like I'm just completely melting down. But then what came out of that is that the joy started to come up and me starting to come out and like, wow, who is this person? And then I remember when I said to people, like they're like, what is your job? I was like, I'm a chartered accountant. And they would look at me and start laughing. They're like, you, that's not possible. I was like, what?
Oh my, oh my. And so did you know at that point, um, that you're being led by perhaps your heart, your soul, towards something that was unfathomable? I can't say that. I don't, because I know that for myself as a woman, and looking at all the many different categories of our lives, and the influences, and what we feel pulled to, I'm curious, how did you come to the sort of doorstep of what you are doing now? Um, did that come about during that time or in the
Um,
midst of it?
I think it was like I knew, like I remember, like when I was 17 in New Zealand, I looked at the book and I think it was Walking the Tiger, right? And I remember I just looked at it and I knew I'm gonna go that way. So like there was like, and I was like, nah, it's not time for me yet. And then I remember when I looked at the last page of Osho book, it was like, I'm going there. And it was very clear that that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And then when I was in India and I was assisting at lots of different workshops on sexuality, on breath work, on inner child. And at that time, I was like, I'm not going to become a therapist. That doesn't feel right. But then the more I was doing it,
Mm-hmm.
the more I started to feel filled up to a point where I can't receive any more inside of me unless I start giving something to people. And I think the work came from me being so filled up. And then it's like, I have to give it out.
Yes.
Only then I can
Yes.
receive something more inside.
Yes.
And I
The
remember,
sharing.
and it's like, it felt like it was like so much. It's like, okay, I can't take anything in more. And so then what I did, I set up a workshop and my first website was Embody the Goddess. And just a workshop for women to really connect, to their body, to their divine feminine, to their sensuality. And I remember setting that workshop up and I was like, I'm just jumping over the chasm. It felt so scary. And especially with my fear of my voice, being in front of people. I remember going to Toastmasters, trying to practice, and I almost fainted at Toastmasters. I had
Oh
to
my
lie
gosh.
down.
Yes.
It was so intense. It's like that fear of humiliation was so intense that it completely collapsed my body. And I remember going to that workshop, it's like, what am I doing? And my daughter, she was just like 6 months old, I think. Like, oh, she was tiny, maybe a year old, no more than that. But I felt like now that she's born, I actually have to follow my dream and do something different.
Yes.
And especially with me going from a history of sexual abuse in my childhood, I remember when she was born, the moment she was born, I just looking at her, this little tiny baby, and I was like, I don't want to pass on to her what I had into,
Yes.
being passed on to me.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
was so clear. It's like, now I can't go back to accountancy. That's done. I have to do something
Yeah.
different, live my purpose, and also work through things that I haven't worked
Yes.
through yet.
That is huge.
I
That
get
is
goosebumps
so
still.
huge.
It's like,
Yeah, I have goosebumps as well because we as women, we have a tremendous responsibility, especially when there is a certain, I think, nexus point of awareness where if we don't pass through that in pure integrity, and especially if we have children, we are only perpetuating the sort of mind control and trauma space of our lineages, and the sort of atavistic collectivism of all the atrocities of humanity. So I love that you were right there with it and took it on full on with your baby, you know. So
it
good for
almost
you.
like, I guess it felt like, well, that was the only way. It wasn't even a choice. I mean, it's kind
Yes.
of a choice, but it's like, and it was so scary. I remember doing that first workshop, I was so scared. But it was like, I have to do that. Like going to Toastmasters, I was so scared, like, why am I? And I was pregnant when I did Toastmasters. So I was like,
Oh.
why am I doing this?
Ah.
And I was like, but I have to. I was
Yeah.
like, what a stupid
Yeah.
idea. Like being whatever, 3-4 months pregnant doing Toastmasters. Like, I have to. And
The,
it just
the
following
brilliance
that
of that,
piece.
Tarisha, I just have to reflect that to you because here you are, you're carrying this beautiful, beautiful baby, and you are moving through carrying your baby and moving through all of the barriers to express your truth, to express
Yeah,
that. I mean, how
finding my
beautiful.
voice. Yeah,
Yes, how beautiful. I'm
yeah.
being pregnant. That's amazing.
And that's now what I teach women, right? How do we connect to ourselves, to our sexuality, to our sensuality,
Yeah,
and fully express ourselves,
yeah,
right? And it's not just, being a sex therapist, it's not just about sex, but actually, how do I fully live, fully expressed? And I feel like it's not just about the heart, but we have to connect our sexuality to our heart because that's what gives us more energy, more fire. And
yes,
then how do I fully express myself in
yeah,
life? And quite often women come to me with relationship problems or, not wanting sex, not feeling attracted. But
yes.
then where it goes is that when they fully step into their full sexual heart connected being, they start to think about what is my purpose? What am I here for? What do I want to bring forward? And it kind of feels like those steps we have to connect sexuality to the heart, to the mind, and then we bring it to
Yes,
the world.
yes, yes. And that allows us, I think, as human beings to uh be in that place of total fulfillment within ourselves so that we're not looking outside ourselves through a relationship, through a career, through outside distractions to define who and what we are and what our purpose is. So, it's like this, it's a very, very powerful journey if you are willing to, like, I always say, burn in the truth, in the love, in the in the traumas of all these sort of erroneous ideas that try to, squash us and squash our spirit and, shut us down. So, what are the sort of common themes that you notice with the women that you work with? And I mean, you mentioned finding your voice.
Yeah. So the common themes are that, first of all, we live so much in the head, and we're like talking heads, and we're disconnected from the body. And then women start to feel, I lose my desire. How it shows up, they lose their sexual desire. But it's more than that. It's kind of desire for life, desire for being fully engaged, fully present in life. And we get lost in the roles we play, the mom, the wife, the professional. And that really our bodies start to protest, and they kind of, we start to shut down in the body, and the body, it shows us, okay, I lost my sexual desire. And somehow for women, I find that sexuality is kind of, it goes off line.
Yes. Yes.
And then also what happens, then women often try to, have sex or just do the things that they think they should be doing, and they lose their voice.
Yes.
And they come to a point where they don't even know what they want, they need, they desire, and they're just keeping on functioning.
Yes.
Playing the roles. And then there's a point where they start to feel like, I'm being used. There's a sense of, I'm just being used, like sex becomes a chore. I'm doing all these things at work. Nothing really fulfills me. There's no pleasure. I have to do all these things for my children, but it doesn't kind of come from my heart. It doesn't fulfill me. And so then they come to a point, and quite often that's why sex is kind of comes as a cornerstone, when it's like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore because I've been doing it without feeling fulfilled. And that's when they come to me, where there's this, okay, what was happening in the relationship? Am I going to lose it?
Yeah.
But it's always a bigger picture. It's not just about sexual desire. It's actually, there's a bigger shutting down of our desires, of who we are, of what we're here to do.
Yes.
Disconnecting from our pleasure, where women start to feel this is selfish somehow. If I actually focus on my pleasure, on my fulfillment, it's selfish. We're more like the role that I'm playing, that becomes more important somehow.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I find
because it's something that is connected to what is outside ourselves. And we're so trained, I think, as humans to look outside ourselves for that reflection, and where it's really an internal job for us to each do, men and women, to like really find our true sovereignty within. And that is a process in and of itself, and especially when we have responsibilities, the modern world is, it's this, that, and the other thing, and it's just constant. And so I know for myself, it was easy to get caught up in the role as mother, the role as businesswoman, the role as, people are always talking about self-care now. I know that back in the 80s, when I was in my 20s, it's like, what is that? That was like really just kind of unheard of. And it was only, self-care was only, say, going to a resort. But now it's like, it's, I think, thankfully, becoming more and more internalized as a kind of a bottom line, I feel, for us humans, men and women, to like really get in contact with what it is that feeds us, so that we're not escaping, and we're actually co-creating lives that we don't need to escape from, being ourselves,
And I feel like the men, it's very like, for men, like women are way more into caretaking roles, but there is a lot of and my partner talks about the nice guy syndrome.
Yes.
It's like men do that as well, right? I'm just trying to be nice, but I'm disconnected from the core of who I am. I'm not following my dreams. And then that attraction stops being there, because if I'm not connected to myself, and I'm trying to, again, play the role or piece, or then there's no one to connect with. And
Yeah.
that's how couples just lose that attraction for each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
But they blame their partners quite often, right? It's because he's like that or she's like that, when actually who am I is the more important question
Yes,
there.
exactly. It's like bring it back to yourself.
Hmm.
So how do you work with your clients and with your students? I'm curious about that. I know when
Yep.
we met, we were both you know, in a seminar, a workshop, a retreat where we were endeavoring to formulate, you know, our sort of next offering. And so I just remember I remember just the sweetness of your vibe, you know, because I felt that whatever you were working on, that yearning to take it to like next level stuff. Um, what was going on for you at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
And back then I feel like there was kind of the start of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because my daughter was there. She was like, what, she was one. I took her, right? I took her to America because it felt like I have to do that. I actually
Yes.
have to do
Yes.
this work. And there I felt a bit, I felt the urge, but then I was told, oh, you should be a relationship coach, or you should help women to find love. And I've tried that, but for me, there wasn't something that I was
Mm-hmm.
passionate about. But somehow, when I said I actually want to work with women on finding their purpose, the business coach said, "Oh, no, that's not gonna sell. Don't do
Is
that."
that
And
amazing?
somehow, even in that environment, I felt like. And then I had another coach, and they said, "Oh, do the weight loss." And I started doing that, and it's never
It
me.
didn't
And
ring.
it
Yes.
and it did. And
Yeah.
only then, when I, through my own exploration and having a group of women, amazing women that were supporting me, I was like, actually, I want to talk about sexuality. This is my thing. That we like, because when I remember back then, my first was like, I want women to feel like more like women. And I had no idea what it was. But now it's like, it
Yes.
totally makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes. Yes. We have this programming, and especially in Western culture, of being pardon my French, the boss bitch, the boss lady, the boss babe. And for me, it never rang with me, because for me, when I hear that, when I hear boss babe, boss bitch, be in charge, I'm seeing over masculinized women. I'm seeing alpha males with boobs and a vagina. I mean, I can't, and it's just not, it doesn't work for me. It's like, no, that is kind of an overlay, this artificial overlay that doesn't allow us to be feminine, doesn't allow us to be in our feminine. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with having masculine energy. I mean, the energy of caretaking is coming from our hearts projected out towards the cause or towards someone. That is a masculine doing, but that is not who we are as women. We are we're different from men. I don't want to be like a man. I don't think like a man. I don't feel it. We're not wired like men. And I think that was fundamental. I don't know if you remember this, but you and I, we had a little bit of an exchange, and I got you, because I'm like going, no, she's onto something. Because I remember we were in these little groups, and
I remember.
the pounding this whole thing about how no, you're missing it. And I'm thinking, no, man, we're not men. I felt kind of like being kind of pushed into the sort of over masculinized thing again. And, you know, no, that wasn't it. So I remember getting your, because I was on your list, getting your, I guess it was your first, your first offering after that. And I thought, she's doing it. She's so doing it, you know. And
Yeah.
it felt like witnessing I very rarely will get this, but there is a sort of blossoming that happens with women that I particularly connect to, where it's not just the blossoming and the expansion, but there's a perfuming that is happening. And the perfume, it moves through the ethers and it evolves, because it's like the thousand-petaled lotus, where you have this offering and then this offering happens and then this offering, and this is the totality of not just what you've been through, but what your clients and students have been through, and it sort of builds and expands. And that to me is part of the feminine mystique and feminine empowerment, is that we evolve, we change, we're mysterious, and it goes on.
I love that perfume thing. And I remember I had a group of women with me from my feminine power, and they were like my midwives. And the first course I taught online was for them. And it was just coming into that, actually, I can't talk about sexuality. This is what I'm about. And it's all for my work. It's all about kind of rewriting our story, right? Who is this woman I'm becoming? What's possible for me?
Yes.
And then we work with the traumas, the critical voice. How do I change it so it supports me? It's not that, and I guess that's again more feminine way of inclusion, rather than the critical voice get out and start fighting with my inner critical voice. Actually, what I invite is that voice and start loving it and see what it can do for me.
Yes.
And then we go into connecting, deeply connecting, and I call it the ancient wisdom of the body. When we really, because that's where I feel the feminine practice comes in, is actually we're so embodied, and the masculine energy, and I'm not saying men, women, but it's more energies, right? The masculine energy is more the consciousness, right? There's this emptiness, but the feminine way is more through moving through the body, feeling it. And so really teach women, how do I become friends with this vessel, with my body, and start talking about it, not as it, but she. So I feel deep respect for the physicality. And I feel like when we start, for me, it's all about, somehow it's about the trees. That's the funny thing. It's like, for me, I love the nature. And for me, I know as humans, if I love my body, then I'm going to take care of nature. And if every time I judge myself, somehow that's what happens in the world. When we start cutting the trees, killing the animals. Every time. And that it feels so connected. And so for me, it's like I am coming back home to my body, loving my body. And that's how I change the world, because I bring reverence for the physicality, for the divinity of our physical expression.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. And it's all in alignment with natural law, cosmic law, the Hermetic principle number 2 of correspondence, as above, so below, from within, so without, so the universe, so the soul. And so that, that basis, having that basis is just so, this is how healing and evolution happens. It's like the intersection of it, the totality of human experience, and being embodied.
And I guess I feel like, like when we can recycle, right, and think, oh, I'm taking care of the planet, but then I hate my body. And also I feel like when women are negative about their genitals, but then they get like, oh, how come there is genital mutilation, somewhere in other countries? But for me, it's the same. If I hate my sexuality, I'm contributing to what's happening out there.
I agree 1000%. Yeah. Because we're all part of the collective soup. And so everything that we do, which is why it always comes back. You don't like what's going on in the world, then you have to extricate your attention from the stuff that you don't like and come back in alignment and check yourself out, really hold yourself accountable. And sometimes I overthink it and I overdo it by, how am I contributing to this thing here? But it always comes back to the self-acknowledgement and the noticing where the critical nitpicky or the self-hate comes in, and where does that come from? You know, to really be able to face it with gentleness and compassion, and you know, bring it along, you know, like I don't leave my parts behind, you know, it's like all the little parts of me, the various little girls who didn't feel like, you know, she was okay and totally unlovable, that she was evil somehow, you know, bringing her along. And that's been, I think, just really powerful for me. And I really love how you're just retrieving all these seemingly disparate parts of our experience as women and bringing it all together.
I guess that's what I feel like I'm really good at. And I'm kind of,
Yeah.
I've done the tantric sacred sexuality practices, and I'm a trained psychotherapist. So bringing that all together.
I
And there's one
know.
piece that you just said, like, that came to me is that, you know, how there's the little girl inside of us. Yeah. And I feel like the other piece that we all do a lot as women, we bring the little girl into the bedroom, and it's not appropriate.
It's not.
So I really teach women, how do I connect to my adult self, to my
Yes.
wise woman? And I
Brilliant.
can take care of my little girl, but she doesn't have a place in the bedroom. Because quite often women come and they say, I feel like a little girl in the bedroom, you know, I feel so, and
Yeah.
it happens
Yeah.
because we drop, but it's not appropriate. So what we need to do is actually, we need to take care of the little girl. And when we engage sexually, we need to become the adult self. And separating those two is such an important piece
Yes.
where we can start to have so
Yes.
much more enjoyment and pleasure.
Yes. Yeah. And
But we need to take care. Yeah.
these are the boundaries that we have to be very conscious about. And I think in a lot of their therapeutic communities, you know, there's a little confusion about that because you know, there's integration, and then there's appropriate integration, using the word appropriate. I don't know what other word, eh, so that there is no confusion, and none of that bleed through, because many of us women have gone through much sexual abuse or abuse of boundaries with our moms, with our dads, with other humans. And so I think it is important, especially when we are talking about conscious sexuality, to be really, really conscious about the presencing and the embodiment that we are doing in that moment. Because I hear a lot, you know, I work with survivors of trafficking. And so the leap of, after dissolving and moving through traumas, to be able to lean more into a relationship, a personal relationship, a sexual relationship, and reframing all of that. And so many of the survivors have an automated lock-in, because, you know, there's so many facets of sexuality, sexual preferences, especially, you know, when you are being sold as an object, a commodity,
It's horrible.
yes, it's horrible. And so that intersection right there, you know, we talk a lot about boundaries, about really having a true and a very clear sense of your sexual nature that is appropriate for you, because it's going to be different for everybody. And so I think it's very, very tricky to do that kind of work. And I just really appreciate all the training that you have undertaken to be able to meld these two very, very distinct therapeutic modalities and bringing them together.
I guess
So-
I'd say that for people, like if we had difficult experiences in the past, that wasn't sex, that was abuse.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And stepping into that, our adult sensual self was never broken. That's a totally different thing.
Yes.
And that needs to be healed, but we still can connect to our pure, beautiful energy.
Yes.
But that was never touched, because what was touched, there was abuse, there wasn't sex.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that is that's a major turning point, I think. In it, I mean, in my experience as a facilitator, that piece of really seeing the distinct difference that it is not even in the same universe.
No.
Yes.
It's
So
completely different.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then we can have access to the beauty of this, because this needs to be healed, but it doesn't relate to this at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where my sacred sexuality practices come in, where I really teach women how do we connect and I feel like we connect our sexuality to our heart, and that's how we can bring beauty into our sexuality, when we bring love into our sexuality. But it needs to be connected, that it's not just sexual, but the sexuality with the heart, with the beauty, with the depth.
So beautiful. Yeah. Aw. I love that we can have this moment together, because you know, I've watched you and I've kept track of you on the Facebook, and you know, I mean, how long has it been since we saw each other in person? I mean,
Oh, but 14, 13 years.
yeah, yeah. And yet, you know, it's like, it's just so cool. It's so cool to me because I know one of my deep longings that is becoming more and more and more actualized, we can use that word, is my deep connections to my sisters, women like you, who are doing this kind of work, because you know, we each bring forth a different sort of cutting edge of peeling back the traumas, and also peeling back all the things that were hidden because of those traumas. And the things hidden are, you know, it's our natural beauty, our natural expression. And it takes a village to be able to do this for all the women and all the men who have been harmed, who have been just egregiously abused. And then, you know, there is also the I think the sort of global community, if you will, that is awakening and opening to go deep in what's being co-created here. And so I really have a deep appreciation for your work and the work of you know, so many of my other brothers and sisters who are willing to do what it takes to do all these trainings that, and they cost money. It's an ongoing thing. I just did a continuing education thing, and I was like, wow, I'm going to be 65 and I'm still doing it, you know, still doing these classes and trainings and meeting, you know, men and women on like these new frontiers of discovering things and connecting those beautiful dots. So
I can bring different perfume. Huh? I like the
yeah,
perfume. Let us
yeah,
bring different perfumes into the world.
yeah, absolutely. You know, so what are you doing lately? What's your latest offering?
Yeah. So I think if people want to find me, so I've got my webinar. It's 5 Keys to Unlock Your Sexual Desire for
Okay.
women.
Okay.
And that's people can just watch it and they can really see what I do.
Okay.
And now I've just started my course. I'm doing a 10-week course, Sexually Empowered Radiant Woman. And that's kind of the core of my work, where I teach my Sexually Empowered Radiant Woman method,
Okay.
where we really deeply go into how do I create a new story? How do I connect to my body? How do I bring sacred sexuality practices? How do I find my erotic voice? So then I can create deeply fulfilling intimacy. And I call it, bring the spirit infused and heart melting intimacy with myself, with the world, with my beloved, if I choose so. So that's kind of the biggest piece of my work.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
And we will have all of Tarisha's information in the show notes below. What do you do for fun? I'm curious.
I just went mountain biking last night.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
mountain biking.
Cool.
And it was so crazy. It was so steep. I had to have two guys passing on my bike to get to the bottom of the ride because it was way too steep. And I also love to swim. I swim through the winter and I love nudie swims. So we just go and just the water awakens me. And I have an ice bath at home, which it's a chest freezer. So we plug it in and I just love the water. I'm a water baby.
Yeah, yeah. And you just had a birthday.
I just had a birthday being Pisces.
Yeah, you're a Pisces. You have the same birthday as one of my best friends, Alihi, who is she's in Australia. So you guys are nearby, and
Maybe we need to connect.
I know. I was just thinking that.
Maybe connect us. Yeah.
How do they not know each other? Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be like really, really cool. Do you have any words of wisdom in terms of, just kind of the place that we're in right now in the world, where there is just so much turmoil? I mean, I avoid all that stuff. I know about it and I don't focus in on it. Do you have any suggestions or any sweet words of encouragement?
I think what comes to me is that if you feel uncomfortable, if something doesn't sit well in your life, use it as a doorway, lean into it, and really lean into it and be curious what's actually going on. Take it as a message that something is not aligned, rather than trying to lean into that. And that's how we find the way through. And we come on the other side, but used as a doorway.
Beautiful. Thank you. I will actually do that. Thank you, Tarisha.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you for your time. And we will be hearing more from you. I would love to have you back on and really go deeper in some of the practices. If you're game for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure. And it's just so nice, Maria, to keep that connection. It's so nice to see each other and keep on. It's quite special, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's very, very special. And thank you so much. And
big hug.
All right. And that's it for today, my loves. So until next time, here is to your love, truth, and beauty. Mwah. Ciao, Bellas.
Bye.
Bye.